Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Chad Gruhl, and I am your professor for this particular course. Today, I want to do a lecture on all the different, or some, I should say, different types of positions that are available in the hospitality industry. It truly is endless, and I've said that before in another recording, and boy is it true. There's just so many different positions out there. So we're just going to cover some of those positions today, get you thinking about this industry and maybe what you would like to do in this industry. So I'm going to share my screen here with you. Give me a second. Great. So the first area that I want to talk about is where I came from, and that is the hotel industry, which is a big part of the hospitality industry, obviously. There are so many different positions out there. The very first position that I tell all of my students, if you're interested in hotels and working your way up in the hotel industry, one of the best places to start is in housekeeping. Now, I want to back up for a second. Most of the jobs that I'm going to be talking about right off the bat are positions for folks that have very little experience in the hospitality industry or the hotel industry. And this particular course assumes that you have very little experience in the industry. So just keep that in mind. So if you do have a lot of experience, please keep that in the back of your mind. So I don't want anybody offended that I'm talking about a position that you may have already done 20 years ago or something like that. And this is mainly going to be for younger folks as well that I'm talking about. So hourly positions and then working your way up into assistant manager positions. But housekeeping, let's go back to that. It is one of the most difficult positions to work in a hotel. Is it glamorous? The answer is no, it is not. Doesn't sound glamorous even. But it's one of the best positions that you can have on your resume. I have it on my resume back in Glacier National Park many years ago. I started out in the industry working in the housekeeping department within a hotel. And why do I say it's great to have on your resume? Because it shows that you know how to work. It knows that you know how to work with people that are different, more than likely different from you, meaning many of housekeeping staff may not even speak English, and you may have a number of housekeepers who don't even speak the same languages, and it's difficult to communicate. Generally speaking, in hotels within housekeeping, there is a lot of turnover in that department. And in most hotels, it's your largest department, and it's a difficult one. And that's why it is what I've always said, having a housekeeping on your resume is it's like gold. And so definitely give that some thought if you are interested in hotels. It's something that I really encourage you to do. Other areas, I'm not going to go into great detail in all of these. And to stop for just a second, if you are interested in talking about one or two or three of these different areas in hospitality, not just hotels, with me, feel free, throw me an email and we'll set up a time. We can meet on Skype or Zoom or just on the phone and to talk about some of these positions. And I'd be more than happy to. That's what I'm here for. That's what I love to do, is to give back to students. I'm extremely passionate about it. So please take advantage of that. Other areas of a hotel certainly is the front desk, which I call the main nervous system of a hotel. Accounting office. I worked in accounting many years ago in a hotel for a year. Accounts payable, accounts receivable. Meetings and events. Many of you are going to go into meetings and events. And I'll mention that a little bit later on. The executive committee, this is generally after you have experience in hourly positions, assistant manager positions, management positions, and then more into the executive type positions. And these are just some of the examples of an executive committee in a mid-sized to a larger hotel. And certainly, there's a lot to talk about with these. I'm not going to go into any detail now. Again, if you want to talk about them, shoot me an email. Be more than happy to. Tourism. Boy, that's a big word. I have always asked this question, and I've been in this industry for a very long time. What does tourism mean? My answer is, I don't really know. No, I'm kind of making fun of that, but for me, how I define tourism, because a lot of people don't know how to define tourism, what I think of is there's this huge umbrella in our industry, and underneath underneath the tourism umbrella is everything within a hospitality industry. So hotels would fall under that, or restaurants would fall under that, transportation, all the different types of jobs within tourism, tours. There's anything and everything fall underneath tourism is how I think about that. And it makes it easier for me to get a little bit of a grasp on that word. Tourism is huge. Hotels to me is not simple, but it is complex. But to me, it's a lot easier to explain what hotels are, different brands, different types of hotels. But underneath tourism, that's a really big word. And so if you're interested in getting into tourism, what does that really mean for you? That's something you're going to need to think about. Tourism, though, is the world's largest industry. That obviously is big. We in the industry of hospitality have a lot of choices, have a lot of possibilities of jobs out there. And so that's, for me, what's so exciting about this industry, and has been for the last 35 years, 40 years that I've been in it, is that it's just wide open, and there's just so many possibilities for folks out there. Let's talk a little bit more, and going into the actual word tourism. There's actually an agency within the United Nations that is all about tourism. Most countries, let's talk about the United States, most states and most cities, not all, but most cities count on some tourism. Many cities, many states, that's all they count on, period, is tourism to bring in money for their local economy, and it's huge. I lived in Colorado for 13 years. Tourism is huge in Colorado. Not only the skiing, but there's the beauty of the mountains. People wanted to go there, to go and visit Denver, to go and to see all these wonderful places within Colorado. And each city and town, small towns even have specializations or have a small office that specialize in tourism to get people to come to their towns and spend money. Certainly Denver did, and that's where I lived most of the time when I was in Colorado. For many developing countries, tourism represents a large part of their GDP, which is the gross domestic product. And some countries, that's their main income. And gross domestic product is, in fact, tourism, getting folks to come and visit their area of the world. It's huge. There are national tourism organizations. These are different things or different jobs, different places that you might be thinking of working in that you may have never thought of before. The travel industry, which is gigantic. For example, travel agencies. State offices of tourism, like I mentioned before, city level tourism, convention and visitors bureaus. Any decent size city within the United States is going to have a convention and visitor bureau. They're the ones who go out there and try to get companies and organizations to have their conventions and meetings in their city. And they are very important organizations to bring that business into cities. National offices of tourism. There's travel associations, there's tour operators, travel agencies, travel corporations that you could work for, tour, hotel, and consolidators. It's gigantic. Consolidators, something that I think of is Priceline or Kayak. All of those folks, that all falls under our industry of tourism and jobs for hospitality. Destination management companies. So the next thing I want to talk about, and again, there's so many more jobs than what I'm putting up here. Again, it's truly endless. Let's switch to the restaurant and bar industry, which many of you are probably in right now. Many folks, when they're going to school, work in restaurants because generally the money is good, especially waiting tables. I know I worked in restaurants when I was in undergrad. And there's a lot of positions and or positions that you can make good money in, especially while going to school. Some of the positions that some of you may be going into after working in a restaurant for a while as a wait person, assistant manager positions such as a assistant bar manager or bar manager, the restaurant manager themselves, event manager within a restaurant. There are those folks in bigger restaurants where that's all they do is put on events within the restaurant. Kitchen manager, this is a position that has taken over in the big restaurant companies such as, for example, Chili's. They don't have a chef within each Chili's. They have a kitchen manager. They don't pay the kitchen manager that much because they're not chefs. Chili's is more of a heat and serve type of a place. And they don't need executive chefs. They have Chili's themselves, I'm guessing, has 2 or 3 executive chefs at their corporate office. They pay them a lot to decide what kind of new creations that they're going to come up with that they can do heat and serve type of food in restaurants like a Chili's, and so they can keep those costs down. Labor is your most expensive expense in restaurants, and so that's something that companies have really cut back on, is expense of executive chefs. Certainly being a restaurant manager, I worked within restaurants, within hotels for many years and have a lot of experience in food and beverage. I can tell you it's one of the places that I had no plans on working in is food and beverage within hotels. And why did I get into it? It was simple. It's because there's so many jobs out there, and I knew that if I wanted to work my way up in a hotel, I needed to have that F&B experience. And I ended up staying in it about for 8 years, and I actually ended up really enjoying it a lot. So other positions within restaurants and bars, executive chef. There's sports bars, there's district managers, there's tons of different types of restaurants. We'll go into that later on in the semester. District managers, certainly district managers in large corporations like a Chili's, for example, can make a lot of money. Nightclubs, that's a whole different animal. If you're interested in nightclubs, definitely we'll talk one-on-one about nightclubs. Brew pubs, where I come from, in microbreweries in Colorado, oh boy, there is a ton of them, and they're all over the country, and they are here to stay, that's for sure. So a new part of our industry that has really taken off in the last number of years, the last 10 years. Coffee shops. That's part of our industry. And so switching and talking a little bit more in depth about meeting and events, there's catering managers, certainly working for a catering company or again, working in a hotel. A lot of folks that are going to be working in meetings and events actually end up working in hotels themselves. Sales managers, banquet managers, wedding planners, if you can deal with the bride. And actually it's not the bride, usually that's the nightmare. It's usually the mother of the bride. Corporate meeting planners, types of meetings, governmental, marketing, education, member services, associations, conventions. That list is also endless. There are so many different types of meetings that happen throughout the country and the world, and they will never end. They are always going to be around, so we need folks that specialize in meeting and events. Other hospitality management positions, cruise lines, that's a big part of our industry. It may sound glamorous, it's not, but if you if you're interested in a position or a part of our industry that you're not familiar with, such as cruise lines, you want to do a lot of reading. You want to do as much research as you possibly can, because you want to find out, is that something I'm really interested in, or am I not interested in? So for example, with cruise lines, if you think you're going to go on board and you're going to have a blast and just sail around the world and see a bunch of different areas or parts of the world, the answer is you're not going to. If you're an hourly position, for example, you're going to be on a ship for 6 months without probably ever getting off that ship. You're probably going to be working 6 to 7 days a week. You're not going to be making much money, probably. And you're going to be living in quarters that are the size of a coffin, and other people that are living on top of you and below you. So is it glamorous? The answer is no. Am I trying to talk you out of it? The answer is no as well. But as you work your way up in a cruise line, that's when you get more perks and, you know, your own quarters and all that kind of stuff. But that's just an example of make sure that you do your homework before you go off and try to get a job if you're not familiar with it. Fast food. That is a great area. I worked in fast food for years. It was hard. Many of you have also worked in fast food, but if you work your way up into a district manager position or an ownership position, you can make some really good money, really good money. And so don't blow off thinking about fast food if you're interested in food and beverage within our industry. Spa management, wow, this is huge. Even 20 years ago, there wasn't much talk about spa management. Today, it is gigantic. So there's a bunch of positions within spas. Being a cook, a concierge, a porter, reservationist, casinos. I worked in the casino industry in Atlantic City for a couple of years, had 600 employees. Completely different animal, as I mentioned before. There is a lot of positions within casinos, a lot to learn about casinos. So that's another area of our industry that you can think about. Sales and marketing within hotels and restaurants and all different parts of tourism to think about. Housekeeping, as I mentioned before, different types of resorts. Certainly there's resorts all over the world. If you like to travel, that is something that you might want to think about. I know that I lived in 14 states altogether in 3 different countries, and it's been fun. It's especially fun when when you're young. My advice is don't buy much stuff because you're going to be moving a lot. When you get older, you don't want to move. It's not much fun. But you want to think about those things. Are you up for moving around the country, and are you up for moving around the world? Those are all things that you need to think about when you're thinking about jobs in the hospitality industry. So maintenance, that's another part of our industry. Valet, again, the list is simply endless. Barback, bartender, maitre d', sommelier, recreation, that's another area of our industry that is gigantic. I think of Six Flags when I think of recreation, and all the different jobs that are available within that particular part of our industry. It's absolutely gigantic. Trains, different types of transportation, planes, bus transportation, or any kind of transportation, more than likely will fall underneath our industry of hospitality. Home delivery service, that's something that's really popped up in the last couple of years, like even with Uber, delivering food from restaurants. And that is really can be considered a part of our industry. So there's just so much to think about. Technology is gigantic and it's constantly changing, as you guys know even better than I do. Technology is constantly changing. So you want to think about different things. Stadiums, football stadiums, hockey stadiums, the food and beverage, all of that is a part of our industry. Prisons. Most of you haven't thought about prisons and working in a prison, but most prisons don't run their own food and beverage anymore. That's all done by companies like Aramark and Sodexo. Also a gigantic part of our industry that you may have not thought of before. Difficult part of the industry, but again, you can make a lot of money. Institutional and corporate contracts, again, part of that contract and institutional contracts for our industry in food and beverage. And that goes far beyond food and beverage actually as well. So there's so many positions out there. Well, with that, I'd like to wrap it up, and I hope that I've gotten you thinking a little bit about some of the possibilities out there for you in this world of hospitality. Again, it is really exciting to talk about it, even after all these years being in this industry somehow, some way. The reason is because it is endless, and there's always something new that you can do. You get bored in one part of this industry after working in it for 15 years, and you want to switch to another. You have that possibility at your fingertips. So I hope that you take advantage of it. That's for darn sure. And I hope you enjoy this course and the rest of your degree. And if you have any questions at all, please shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. In the meantime, take care.